topic in that session. As mentioned, he went out on the hard rear tyre and ended up in 6th place. So will that have given him a little bit of a quandary going into this race this afternoon in terms of his tyre choice?
Yeah, looking at Jorge Martino, of course, has qualified in the front row. He was down in 13th place in that session. There's Pol Espargaro, then he was 12th. He's got a lot of work to do coming through from 6th place on the grid. And let's hope he's not the lone representative in this first Indonesian Grand Prix in a quarter of a century, because there will be some concerns about the way Marc Marquez did stagger off in the gravel trap earlier on there. He'll have to go, of course, now with the new concussion protocols here in MotoGP to get medically approved to start the 27-lap race later on. There's the spectacular helicopter shot of this jaw-dropping location. They told us Lombok was going to be spectacular. They told us it was going to be special. Well, it really is. We're going to have a treat, the Indonesian fans, later on today. The first Grand Prix here since 1997, when Tadej Okada took out a Repsol Honda lockout of the podium. I don't think that's going to, well, it won't happen today, of course, because we've only got 2 Repsol Honda bikes. Let's just quickly, while we're looking at this practice start session, just pop down to Simon Craypole. Simon, first of all, apology to you and to Pablo Nieto for butting in there, but that was truly horrendous, seeing that Marc Marquez flying a good, 15 feet in the air. One of the most violent high sides we've seen in the modern 4-stroke era.
No problem at all, buddy. Both of us, Pablo and I, wanted to see it as well. You know, I mentioned to you during practice yesterday and qualifying that it looked to me that they were struggling on closed throttle entry, like being able to trust, you know, the rear to stay there. Normally in that area, it doesn't let go until maybe towards the end of the race, you know, when the tyre drops. So I don't know how many laps Mark had on that soft rear, but proper scary. It's the sort of crash that electronics, you know, with all the layers of good electronics they got on the bikes, it can't stop, because you're going in there, lean over, closed throttle, you're expecting problems from the front, not the rear, and for it to come around there, launch him at probably the worst place on the circuit. Yeah, he's so lucky to get away with it.
Yeah, thanks, Simon. Sector 2 is probably one of the fastest individual sectors, not just around Mandalika, but on the entire 21 World Championship calendar. It was a Sector 2 that even Marc Marquez talked about in the pre-season test, where he was a little bit cautious and conservative going through there because of the high-speed nature of it, and you don't really hear those words coming out of a guy like Marc Marquez. He rides like the devil. Talking of the devil, here's El Diablo in this specially arranged practice start session. No dramas for him. As we mentioned, the 1:32.001 means he topped FP2. He's on pole after the end of Q2, and he's going to go into the race full of confidence after topping that really dramatic warm-up session. Marc Marquez had the massive moment earlier on going through turn 10, and then, like Simon said, there's no electronic aids in the world that are going to save him from that horrendous high side at high speed going through turn number 7. I'll tell you what, Lewis, every time we've seen Fabio Quartararo launch that M1 this weekend, he has absolutely nailed it. If the Ducati are going to ambush him, they're going to have some really good starts.
Yeah, and Quartararo, he's identified from a very early stage just how important the start of the Grand Prix is here this afternoon. If Quartararo gets the start, as we see Marc Marquez thankfully up on his feet, understandably I think a little bit shaken. He's just out the back of the Repsol Honda box, but on the back of a scooter, so I wonder if he's heading down for some medical checks. But yeah, Fabio Quartararo, if he can get the start right, you'd imagine he's going to be very, very difficult to dislodge from the front of the Grand Prix. He's got a rhythm and a race pace that is very, very difficult to match. Marc Marquez having a little bit of a chat there. He seems relatively, I suppose, relatively under the circumstances, relatively calm with what's happened as he discusses what. Here's another look at it then. Marc Marquez a little bit wide then into 6. This is 7 coming up now. And as the rear comes round, Marc Marquez is vaulted up in the air.
That is such a violent crash. Here he goes then. Look at this. This is a 4th gear corner. 4th gear, just under 200 kilometers an hour. That's how violent that crash was. Alberto Puig, he turns away. He knows. He's an ex-racer himself, Alberto Puig. I don't care who you are. I don't care how good you are as a rider like Marc Marquez is. That is going to have a massive impact on your confidence going into the Grand Prix. We saw there Dr. Angel Chartra coming down to the back of the Repsol Honda garage just to have an initial check and chat with Marc Marquez as he heads off to the medical centre. Let's hope for Honda's sake, and let's hope for the fans' sake, of course. Marc Marquez is so popular in this part of the world. He is like a rock star. We saw the great reception the MotoGP riders got with President Jakawi here pre-race. Well, there was tens of thousands of fans lining the streets in Jakarta just a few days ago. So let's hope for the show and for the fans' sake. They've waited so long for MotoGP that one of the main men in the championship, Marc Marquez, is fit enough to ride. We saw a lot of riders, didn't we, at the end of that session and during that session, get ready for the flag-to-flag bike swap. As we said, a few pessimistic weather forecasts around for race time at 3 p.m. Look at that. What a spectacular sight that is. I think for scenery and sort of picture postcard setting, only really Phillip Island runs this place close. I mean, it's just such a stunning location, Lewis.
Beautiful, beautiful location, and it looks like we're going to have the crowd that this Grand Prix certainly deserves later on this afternoon. Of course, they've got a home favourite on the front row of the grid in the upcoming Moto3 race as well, an exciting MotoGP race that's likely ahead of us. Of course, the Marc Marquez story dominated the end of that MotoGP warm-up, but a couple of other things just to draw your attention to. Another impressive session for Marco Bezzecchi, who would perhaps have felt he would have been in Q2 yesterday afternoon without that crash in the first session. He was 9th fastest. It's Luca Marini in 23rd and Darren Binder in 24th.
So up late in our first Indonesian Grand Prix for 25 years, will Marc Marquez be involved with that massive warm-up crash at turn 7? No dramas though for the world champion. Fabio Quartararo on pole, and he tops the warm-up here in Mandalika.